I blamed it on the winter fog rolling in from the bay. That's what I told myself when Margaret Chen, my late business partner's attorney, called me into her office on a Thursday morning in February. The San Francisco skyline was barely visible through the gray mist, pressing against her floor-to-ceiling windows in the financial district. She locked the door, pulled the blinds, and placed a silver external hard drive on the polished mahogany desk between us. "David," she said, her voice measured and careful. Stephen left specific instructions. "You're to watch this alone. Don't tell anyone, especially not Jessica. Do you understand?" Stephen Wu had been dead for 6 weeks. Massive heart attack at 62, they said. Found slumped over his desk at home on a Sunday evening. I'd given the eulogy at his funeral, standing in front of 300 people, barely able to get the words out. My business partner of 23 years, the man who'd stood beside me when we founded TechVault Solutions in a garage in Palo Alto back in 1998. The man who'd been best man at my wedding to Jessica 12 years ago, and now his attorney was handing me a hard drive with a warning not to tell my wife. I took it home that afternoon. Jessica was at her yoga class, wouldn't be back until 6. I locked myself in my study, the room where Stephen and I had sketched out our first business plan on a whiteboard that still hung on the wall. My hands were shaking as I plugged the drive into my computer. One folder, one video file. Timestamp: January 3rd, 2026. 2 days before Stephen died. I clicked play. Stephen's face filled the screen. He looked terrible, exhausted, gaunt, older than I'd ever seen him. He was sitting in this very room. In the chair I was sitting in now, I recognized the books on the shelves behind him. "David," his recorded voice said, "if you're watching this, I'm dead. And if I'm dead, it means they succeeded." My chest tightened. "They? I'm going to tell you something that's going to destroy you. I've spent 3 months trying to find another explanation, any other explanation. But there isn't one. Your wife Jessica and your CFO Kevin Zhang are having an affair. They have been for at least 2 years. But that's not the worst part." I paused the video. My heart was hammering against my ribs. Jessica and Kevin? I'd known Kevin for 15 years. He'd been our first employee when we expanded. Brilliant with numbers. Completely trustworthy. Or so I'd thought. And Jessica. We'd been together for 12 years. Married for 9. I loved her. I trusted her. I forced myself to click play again. They've embezzled approximately $15 million from TechVault over the past 18 months. I have documentation, bank records, shell company filings. It's all on this drive. They created a series of fake vendor accounts and have been systematically draining the company in preparation for our IPO. Stephen leaned closer to the camera, his eyes intense. "But here's what's going to kill you, David. Literally. I discovered something else. Jessica and Kevin knew I was investigating them. 2 weeks ago, I was followed. Last week, someone broke into my house while I was at the gym. Nothing was stolen, but my files had been searched. Yesterday, I started feeling sick, dizzy, chest pains, shortness of breath. I went to my doctor, told him everything. He ran. Tests." Stephen held up a piece of paper to the camera. "Potassium levels through the roof. Someone's been poisoning me, David. Slow, steady doses of potassium chloride. Causes heart arrhythmia. Mimics a natural heart attack. My doctor wanted me to go to the hospital immediately, but I told him I needed 24 hours to get this evidence to you." His face softened, sadness replacing the intensity. "I'm sorry, my friend. I know what this is going to do to you, but you need to know, because I think you're next. The IPO is in 3 months. Once that goes through, TechVault will be valued at over $500 million. Your shares alone are worth $200 million. Jessica is your sole beneficiary." The video ended. I sat in the darkness of my study, watching the cursor blink on the paused screen. The fog outside had turned to rain, drumming against the windows. I felt like I was underwater, everything muffled and distant. I spent the next 4 hours going through the files on the hard drive, bank statements showing wire transfers to accounts in the Cayman Islands, email exchanges between Jessica and Kevin discussing the plan, photographs of them together in hotel rooms, in restaurants, in Kevin's apartment, time-stamped, dated, undeniable. And then I found the folder labeled David. Medical records, my medical records. But I hadn't been to the doctor in 6 months, since my annual physical. These were dated from the past 2 weeks. Appointments I'd never made. Prescriptions I'd never filled. All with Dr. Richard Morrison's signature. Dr. Morrison. Jessica's friend from her book club. The cardiologist, who lived 3 houses down from us, in Pacific Heights. I opened another file. Text messages between Jessica and Dr. Morrison. Jessica. How long until symptoms show? Morrison. Another 2 weeks at current dosage. Don't increase it yet. Has to look natural. Jessica. Stephen was too smart. Should have dealt with him differently. Morrison. Heart attack was clean. No one suspected. David's will be the same. Grief. Stress from losing his partner. Underlying condition. I'll document. Perfect. The timestamp was from 4 days ago. I closed my laptop, walked to the bathroom, vomited. When I came back to my study, I noticed something I'd missed. A folder labeled, Watch First. I'd skipped it in my rush to see the evidence. Another video. Stephen again, but this one recorded the same day as the first, judging by his clothes. David, I know what you're feeling right now. Betrayed. Terrified. Probably in shock. I need you to listen very carefully to what I'm about to tell you. I have a plan, but it requires you to trust me completely, even though I'm dead. He laid out the most insane, audacious plan I'd ever heard. It was brilliant. It was terrifying. It was the only way I'd survive. I've already set everything in motion, Stephen said. Margaret has instructions. The FBI has been contacted. But they need more evidence. Evidence that can only be obtained if Jessica and Kevin think they've won. You have to play dead. David, it's the only way. I watched Jessica's headlights sweep across the study window as she pulled into the driveway at 6:15. I had approximately 3 minutes. I copied everything from the hard drive onto 3 separate encrypted backup drives. Hid 2 of them in places Jessica would never think to look. Took the 3rd and locked it in the safe in Margaret's office that night, driving there before Jessica even noticed I'd left. When I came home, I acted normal. I kissed my wife. I asked her about yoga. I ate the dinner she'd prepared. Chicken piccata with a glass of white wine. Every bite felt like swallowing glass. But I smiled and complimented her cooking. That night, lying in bed next to her, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Stephen's text messages to Margaret that he'd included in the files. About how he knew they'd kill him, but he was going to make sure I survived. About how our friendship meant more to him than his own life. The next morning, Friday, I told Jessica I wasn't feeling well. Dizzy, I said. Probably just stress from work. She was immediately solicitous, bringing me tea with honey, suggesting I rest. I watched her hands as she stirred the honey into the tea. Wondered if this was the dose that was supposed to kill me. I drank it. I had to. I couldn't let her know I suspected anything. By noon, I actually did feel terrible. Chest pains, irregular heartbeat, shortness of breath. I called my doctor, my real doctor, Dr. Patterson. Told him I needed to see him immediately, but I'd come to his home, not his office. I'd known James Patterson for 20 years. We played golf together. Our kids had gone to school together before my daughter went to college. I trusted him with my life, which was appropriate because that's exactly what I was doing. In his home office, I told him everything, showed him the files on my phone, watched his face change from confusion to horror to grim determination. Let me run some tests, he said. He drew blood, took urine samples, checked my vitals. 2 hours later, he had results. Potassium levels are elevated. Not immediately dangerous yet, but definitely abnormal. There are also traces of digoxin, a heart medication you've never been prescribed. David, someone is absolutely poisoning you. We sat in his kitchen while his wife was out grocery shopping, and we made a plan. A variation on Stephen's plan, adjusted for timing and my specific situation. You'll have a heart attack next Tuesday, Dr. Patterson said. At home, in the evening, Jessica will call 911. Paramedics will arrive. They're already briefed. You'll be DOA at the hospital. I'll pronounce you dead. The FBI will be waiting. What about the body? I asked. Body double. Already arranged. Closed casket funeral due to your condition. Cremation. To follow. The double will be cremated. By the time Jessica finds out, if she ever does, she'll already be in custody. It was Wednesday afternoon. I had less than a week to live. Officially, I spent those days saying goodbye to my life. I visited my daughter Emma at Stanford, told her I loved her, without being able to tell her why I was being so emotional. I walked through the Tech Vault offices one last time, looking at what Stephen and I had built together. I sat in my study and remembered every conversation, every laugh, every late night working on code with my best friend. And every evening, I drank the tea Jessica made me, felt my heart struggle a little more each day. Let Dr. Patterson monitor my levels, ready to hospitalize me if it got truly dangerous. On Monday night, Jessica asked me if I'd updated my will recently. After Stephen died, she said, fingers playing with her wine glass. It made me think about how we never know when our time is up. You should make sure everything is in order. For Emma's sake. I looked at my wife across the dinner table, still beautiful at 45. Her dark hair pulled back in a ponytail, her yoga-toned arms, her practiced smile. I'd loved this woman, planned to grow old with her. You're right, I said. I'll call the attorney tomorrow. Her smile widened. Good. I just want to make sure we're protected. That I'm protected, if anything ever happened to you. Tuesday evening, February 24th, 2026, 7:30 p.m. I was sitting in my study, supposedly going over quarterly reports. Jessica was downstairs, watching TV. I'd had my tea an hour ago. Dr. Patterson was on standby at the hospital. The paramedics were ready. The FBI was in position. I sent a text message to Jessica's phone from my laptop, spoofing Kevin's number. We'd agreed this would be the trigger. It's done. He just signed everything over. We're clear. I heard her phone chime downstairs. Heard her footsteps coming up the stairs, faster than usual. She opened the door to my study. David, are you feeling all right? I grabbed my chest. It wasn't hard to act. I actually did feel terrible. I can't breathe. I fell out of my chair. Jessica screamed, but I noticed she didn't rush to me immediately. She stood there for almost 5 seconds, watching me convulse on the floor, making sure. Then she pulled out her phone and called 911. Please, help. My husband, he's having a heart attack. Please hurry. I heard the sirens. The paramedics rushed in. They worked on me, going through all the proper motions while Jessica stood in the doorway, her face a mask of concern. I caught her eyes once. There was something behind the worry, something that looked almost like satisfaction. They loaded me onto the stretcher. Through half-closed eyes, I saw Jessica following the ambulance in her car. Her hands were steady on the wheel. At the hospital, Dr. Patterson pronounced me dead at 8:47 p.m. Jessica collapsed in the hallway, weeping. Nurses consoled her. Someone brought her water. I watched it all from a hospital room 3 floors up, through security camera feeds on a tablet. Watched my wife cry over my death. Watched her step outside and make a phone call. It's done, she said to whoever was on the other end. He's gone. The funeral was on Friday. Closed casket, like we'd planned. I watched the live stream from a safe house the FBI had set up for me in Marin County. Watched my daughter cry as she gave her eulogy about her father. That was the worst part. Emma didn't know. Couldn't know. Not yet. The FBI had insisted. The fewer people who knew I was alive, the better. Jessica wore black Valentino. She cried at all the right moments, accepted condolences with grace, let people tell her how strong she was being. At the reception afterward, I watched through a camera hidden in the floral arrangement as Kevin Zhang approached her. They stood apart, appropriate distance for a widow and her late husband's employee. But their eyes told a different story. That night, Jessica and Kevin met at the Four Seasons. The FBI had every room wired for sound and video. I sat in the safe house, listening to them celebrate. "To David," Kevin said, raising a glass of champagne. "May he rest in peace." Jessica laughed. Actually laughed. "To $15 million in the Caymans, and 200 million more coming our way in 3 months. You were brilliant with the potassium dosing," Kevin said. "Morrison really came through. He owes me," Jessica said. "I kept quiet about his prescription fraud ring for 3 years. Now we're even." They talked for hours. About how they'd planned this for 2 years. How they'd met in secret every Tuesday when Jessica claimed to have yoga class. How Kevin had fallen in love with her the moment she'd joined Tech Vault as Steven's executive assistant 9 years ago. Before she'd even met me. "Did you ever love him?" Kevin asked. Long pause. "I loved his money," Jessica finally said. "I loved what his success could give me. David himself? He was boring. Predictable. Always working. Always focused on the company. You're so much more exciting, Kevin." I turned off the audio feed. I'd heard enough. The FBI moved in 2 days later. Early Monday morning. Simultaneous raids. Jessica at our house in Pacific Heights. Kevin at his apartment in Russian Hill. Dr. Morrison at his office in the medical complex downtown. I was allowed to watch the arrests through live video feed. Jessica was still in her robe when the FBI knocked on the door. She answered with her coffee in hand, probably expecting a delivery. Her face when they showed her the warrant was everything I'd needed to see. "Jessica Zhang, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, attempted murder, wire fraud, and embezzlement." "This is insane. I'm a widow. My husband just died." "Your husband is alive, Mrs. Zhang. And he's been very helpful in our investigation." The color drained from her face. "That's impossible. I was at his funeral. I watched them. Close. His casket. Body double," Agent Morrison said. "Would you like to tell us about the potassium chloride you've been administering to David Park for the past 3 weeks? She lawyered up immediately. "Stop talking." But it didn't matter. We had everything. Kevin tried to run. Made it as far as the airport before they caught him boarding a flight to the Cayman Islands with a briefcase containing $2 million in cash. Dr. Morrison attempted to negotiate. Offered to testify against Jessica in exchange for a lighter sentence. The FBI played him recordings of his own voice discussing murder for hire. He stopped negotiating. 3 months later, I sat in a federal courtroom and watched all 3 of them get sentenced. Jessica, 25 years for attempted murder, conspiracy, and fraud. Kevin, 20 years for embezzlement, conspiracy, and fraud. Dr. Morrison, 15 years for conspiracy to commit murder and prescription fraud. Jessica looked at me across the courtroom when the verdict was read. I met her eyes and felt nothing. The woman I'd loved was gone. If she'd ever existed at all. After the trial, I met with Margaret Chen in her office. "Stephen knew," I said. "He knew they'd kill him. But he did it anyway. He made sure I'd survive." Margaret nodded. "He made me promise to give you this after the trial." She handed me an envelope. Inside was a letter, in Stephen's handwriting. "David, if you're reading this, justice was served. That's all I ever wanted. You were more than a business partner. You were my brother. I couldn't let them take you too. Live your life, my friend. Build something new. Fall in love again. Maybe with someone who actually deserves you this time. And remember our promise from the early days. Change the world, one innovation at a time. Your friend always, Stephen." I folded the letter and put it in my pocket. TechVault's IPO went forward in May. Without Kevin's embezzlement, the company's financials were even stronger than projected. The stock opened at $75 a share. By the end of the first day, it was at 120. My shares were worth $280 million. I donated $50 million to create the Stephen Wu Foundation for Business Ethics Education. Another $20 million went to establishing a scholarship fund at Stanford in his name. With the rest, I started over. Emma graduated from Stanford with honors in computer science. She knows the whole story now. We're closer than we've ever been. She asked me once if I ever forgave Jessica. Forgiveness is for people who made mistakes, I told her. Jessica didn't make a mistake. She made calculated choices over years. That's not forgivable. But I don't carry hatred either. I just carry the memory of who I thought she was, and the knowledge of who she really is. And I carry Stephen's friendship, which was real when my marriage wasn't. I still visit Stephen's grave every month. He's buried in a cemetery overlooking the bay, with a view of the city, where we built our dreams together. I tell him about the foundation, about the hundreds of students who've received scholarships in his name, about the ethics programs being taught in business schools across the country. And I tell him thank you, because my best friend saved my life from beyond the grave. He sacrificed himself to expose evil and ensure justice. He gave me a second chance at living. I'm 63 years old now. I've built a new company, smaller than Tech Vault but more meaningful. I work with nonprofits, developing technology solutions for organizations that can't afford commercial prices. I'm dating again, taking it slow, learning to trust. Every morning, I wake up grateful to be alive, and every evening, I make my own tea.